So can you all see that screen?
Can.
This is not the right one though.
Whoops.
Can you see that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our program for tonight. We have we'll do a prayer and then we'll talk about the purpose of the forum. I'll give you a brief definition of clinical pastoral education. And then we have 5 panelists, seminarians, fellow seminarians who are currently doing their CPEs, and they're going to provide some insight on their experiences in doing wherever their location is. And then we have a Q&A session. Well, thank you for coming. My name is Neil Reeves. I'm a member of the SEC. Currently serve as the secretary. Jennifer is under the weather tonight, so she couldn't make it. So I agreed to step in. Let us go to the cross. Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for all the blessings that you've bestowed upon us this year in just a couple of days. We thank you for allowing us to be in seminary to pursue our journey to do the work that you call us to do. Tonight we meet to learn more about clinical pastoral education. And we pray that the panelists tonight will be insightful, and those who have come will learn information that they can use in their discernment as they continue to do your work. We pray for our seminary community. We pray for the nation. Keep us, pray for those who are on the battle lines fighting COVID. We pray for healing in the nation as well. We pray that you put the good news on our lips as we encounter strangers from day to day. Keep us safe. Thank you for being our refuge. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, tonight, I think you're aware that we're talking about clinical pastoral education. For our guests, our visitors who may not know what it is, one of the best things to do is go to Google. So a CPE is a combination of professional education and hands-on experience providing spiritual care to patients, families, and staff members in multi-faith clinical settings. And so here at the seminary, we have an opportunity to do field education replacement, or in addition to that, we can do a CPE. And so tonight we have 4 panelists, Martha Harris, Gail Stallings Minor, Jonathan Paredes, Beth Eustace, and Shandola Tillman as our guests who will share their experiences. And so I have provided them these questions, not that. Let me, can you see those questions?
Yes.
All right. So I provided these questions to them earlier before the panel discussion. So I requested that when they each talk about their experiences, they would incorporate some of these discussion areas in their presentation. Each panelist will have 3 to 5 minutes to discuss their experience, and then we have questions and answers. We do want to end around 6:15. We know some of you have classes at 6:30, so we want to give you an opportunity to refresh before your class starts. All right, the first panelist, Martha, would you like to go?
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm finishing up my 4 years of the weekend program at LTS and using my second year of field education as a clinical pastoral intern at Lancaster General Health, the big trauma hospital in downtown Lancaster that's now affiliated with Penn Medicine. I chose that particular program because it's accredited by the Association for Clinical Pastoral Education. So you can Google that, but that is one of the official accrediting bodies of a CPE program. If someone wants to continue to become a chaplain, they would need to complete at least 3 more units of pastoral CPE education. This whole year, from September through the end of April, is equivalent to 1 unit of CPE education. In terms of looking for how soon should you start, it really depends on what your denominational or ordination requirements are. I'm an Episcopalian, and CPE is a requirement for ordination. So I chose to do it in my second year of field education. Field education is, of course, required as well, 2 years to get your MDiv at LTS. So it's a good way to not only meet the graduation requirements, but frankly, to also meet the ordination requirements. But even more fundamentally, it's been a really important part of my own spiritual formation and hopefully of my future ministry. I'm particularly attracted to a healing ministry, and that's very much what a chaplain does and works on. You can start now. I don't know what year. I think there's a couple of first-year students, so maybe by next year you would think about it. Hewitt Thizome is in our program also. He is a second-year day student at LTS. I thought he might be joining us tonight, but I don't see him on the Zoom. He's also the vice moderator and helped prepare me for tonight's presentation. But Keith Espenshade is the manager of he's the clinical pastoral education person at LGH. And I checked with him before tonight, and he said he's already starting to get applications for next year. Now, so the program runs on a school year basis. It typically starts late September and goes through April. So it matches the calendar of LTS. There is a strong pipeline of people that go from LTS to LGH. Keith told me that of the 400 people that he's had run through the program since the program began in 1998, about 40% come from LTS. So lots of good synergy. Keith has actually taught as an adjunct at LTS, and so there's a strong synergy. Dr. Melvin Baber, who heads up field education, is on the advisory board for the CPE program at LGH. So professionalism and formation are really important criteria. I think another is just the caliber of medical care that's provided at the hospital. And I think Jonathan would probably agree with me on that. He's at Hershey Med, but LGH is the trauma unit in Lancaster. There is no other emergency room. So there is not a boring moment when I'm doing CPE work at the hospital. I get exposed to just about everything. I haven't really had to do much in the pediatric wing, and the behavioral health hospital is at a different unit. There's chaplains at the Cancer Institute, as well as at the Rehab Hospital and the Behavioral Health Institute. So, but the program is based in the main hospital unit. What documentation is needed? I guess that means for your application. And it's a pretty extensive application. Again, I'm assuming it varies by site. I only applied to the one program. I think my application went in about this time last year. And I remember I got accepted on February 6th. You need a couple of recommendations. You need to tell your story. Why is God calling you to learn to be a chaplain? And what in your previous experience has equipped you for the wide range of prayer and social skills and emotional stability do you need to be an effective chaplain? The time commitments also vary, but typically the term of 400 hours is, I think, the standard across the ACPE certified programs. And that breaks down to about 100 hours of instruction We have a 3.5-hour class on Monday afternoons that's a combination of didactic and reflection. We're learning new content, applying new knowledge, and then we're processing what we've been learning. And then the rest of the 300 hours is clinical on-site. So I'm at the hospital all day, 8 hours on Tuesday, and about 6 to 7 hours on a Wednesday night from 4 to 10:30 or whenever the last trauma alert is. There are chaplains at LGH 24/7. So 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And there are 4 of us who are interns, 2 are residents, they're paid full-time, and then there's a variety of full-time chaplains and associate chaplains, many of whom are also ministers, and they use the CPE, the chaplaincy as supplemental income. How does a student make sure his or her class schedule is not adversely affected? Well, for example, I'm not there on the weekends. I chose to set up my clinical hours during a time when I wouldn't be in class. So that's why I'm there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Hewitt is a day student, so his schedule actually changed because of COVID, and he's not physically on site. He's making phone calls to COVID patients. As an intern, we're not supposed to be directly in contact with COVID patients, but there's a big area of need for keeping the families connected to their loved ones who are in isolation when they're dealing with COVID. And Hewitt's providing a lot of that spiritual connection, which is tremendous. So it's really up to you and the program you choose and the flexibility of the schedule that they allow you to pick. I was allowed to pick the clinical hours that I wanted, so I chose the time that I did. The other 2 interns work the weekends because they have day jobs during the week. What are the emotional and physical burdens of the program? It's a very exhausting, exhilarating, exciting, and energizing program. It's a yin and a yang kind of a situation, I think, where you're constantly on the go. You're not really there to write your weekly reflections. You're there to go see patients. We carry a mobile heartbeat phone and a pager. So if a trauma alert comes in, we're expected to go down to the emergency department and be there when the ambulance arrives with the patient. A stroke alert or code blue or code red, which could be an end of life call. We're there to try to connect to the family and help be part of the team that's caring for that patient. So it really requires that you have a strong personal prayer life yourself and that you're able to cope with a wide variety of different emotional situations. These last couple of months, as the COVID cases have risen, it seems that the rate of death is escalating as well. Just in the month of December, there were 69 COVID deaths at LGH. So I would be curious to hear about the other chaplains and what their experience has been in their hospitals. And again, I'm not dealing with those directly, but I am, because the hospital set up a Blue Jeans network. Blue Jeans is a system that can be used for telehealth visits, where it enables person-to-person conversations, video conferencing. Every bedside has a Blue Jeans monitor. Every nurse's station has a Blue Jeans connection. So a couple of weeks ago, I was asked to give a final prayer to a COVID patient. And I did that standing at the Blue Jeans station in the hallway outside the patient's room so he could see and hear me give that prayer. So you really have to ask yourself, is this something that you feel called to do? Is it, reaching people in their point of greatest need and their greatest vulnerability is not for everybody, but for those who are called to this ministry, it's an incredibly powerful experience. And I'm very, very grateful to be there. What classes are beneficial? I would say pastoral care. I was glad to take pastoral care with Dr. Leah Thomas when she was on our faculty. I think Hewitt has taken 2 courses in pastoral care. So he felt that he needed both of those, and that's really good preparation. So pastoral care is an important class. I think it's one of our required courses. But if you feel called as a result of taking that course to be more on the front lines, then I think CPE is something you should consider. Did I cover all the topics, Neil?
You did great. Thank you very much.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure there's a lot of information I would have liked to provide, but I wanted to at least hit all the highlights of what you asked for.
I appreciate that. And so we'll do a Q&A at the end. Next is Jonathan.
All right, so third year student, my last semester.
Class of 2021.
Yeah, I'm doing my CPE at Hershey Medical, and I actually didn't know what I was going to do for field education, so I started applying to programs towards the end of March. I applied to 3 programs, LGH, York, and Hershey, and I really did look at all the programs, and for my interviews, I did ask a lot of questions about what the program expected from me, what were their, even their teaching strategies, like how are they going to teach CPE, which was very important to me. So the qualities of a good CPE site and what to look for, I think it's very individual. Martha said that she looked for a place for healing ministry. I looked for a place that was more academic, and the CPE director at Hershey is an absolute brain. So between the director and the instructor, who is more academic, the director, he's more from a business perspective. So he's all about the numbers and what are we actually doing and how are we impacting them. I think first day he said, we don't care how many people you see. We care about the time that you spend with them. So we chart our visits based upon how much time we spend with each patient. So it doesn't matter how many patients we see in a day. They give us a list of like 20, 30 people. It's like, but just spend time. And I think it's more about the quality of care, which is nice, as opposed to like our in-classroom sessions, which are Monday mornings. That's from 8 to noon. And that's very academic. I think we've gone through 3 books already in the first half. And then it has to deal with like really heavy topics. So I think coming in, like you're very exposed to what your fears are. And my fear was talking to people about death and dying and suffering. My first week there, and you're a chaplain from the moment you walk in.
That's exactly right.
You make that known. And they tell you like, look, we know you're not an expert. We know that you're probably going to feel awkward. But the thing is, nobody's going to die because of anything you do. And we're not going to fire you and you're not going to get kicked out. So there's no negative repercussions. It is really like a very vulnerable place and a place of learning. I've learned through my time there that, yeah, especially my biggest fears were very confronted. One day I had to deal with 3 different death situations like back to back. And it's real. There's no prep. You could read all the books you want about it. You could sit in class, do your reflections, do your didactics. You could do all these things in the classroom. But when you get into the moment, it is, yeah, you use what you've learned, but you definitely still have to like rely on, instinct and, yeah, just being kind and compassionate. I think at the end of the day is really what comes through. So each site is different. I felt that the Hershey was a little bit up my road with the strenuous. It's very strenuously academic. I'll say that. Okay. So what else? What the documentation is needed. So when you fill out the application for the ACPE site, it's pretty much basically the same. I know York has a different formatting for theirs, York Hospital, but it's still the same application. So I literally cut my ACPE, cut and pasted onto York's website. And that's how I submitted my applications. I think you need some references and stuff, and yeah. And so be aware for LTS, you need to have like a commitment form before the end of your school year this year so you can start it next year. So for me, that was a little bit of a challenge with the COVID thing because trying to get all that. I think I ended up filling out my commitment form like in July. And that was with the field ed people like on my case, and I was just going back and forth with people. And so that's as soon as I got it. Do not do that. You're supposed to like know before you leave the end of the school year. So I would start now. If I'm interested, start researching programs. And the directors are okay with you emailing them and asking them questions, because at the same time, they're looking for the right candidates for theirs. So I think In my cohort at my CPE, there's 11 of us, and then there's 8 residents. So even that team has to like be organized well. And then you're on call, you're by yourself 12 hours, either day or night. Time commitments, okay. So it is a huge commitment. I did not anticipate like how much of my time is going to take. I just knew, well, I got 4 hours of clinicals that I do per week. And then every other week I have a 12-hour shift. So I thought that was going to be it. But then there's class time. There's a lot of writing time, especially for Hershey. We have a lot of assignments that we reflect upon, write, and do verbatims on. So it is a big time commitment. I know I would have enjoyed the process if I didn't have to do it along with my school. So if I had like a 4th year to do this and just do my CPE, it would have been perfect, but I wanted to graduate and I didn't want to like do it on top of other things. So class schedule is, so for Hershey was very flexible. I told them when I had classes. So my on-call shift is every Tuesday night, overnight, starting 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., which gives me just enough time to log into class. But life happens. And last Tuesday morning, a code came in. A lady was hemorrhaging and she was afraid to be alone because she thought she was going to die. So I had to sit there and wait with her for almost an hour until her son arrived. I got to class late, but you're doing ministry. And I know, I'm sure the professor was, didn't like that I was late to her class, but in the moment I felt like I needed to be there. I really felt uncomfortable leaving, and just my presence. We didn't talk much, but she just said she didn't want to be alone if anything bad happened. So these are decisions you have to make, and you have to be prepared to make. But it is a huge steep curve of learning. Do I feel confident now? A lot more than I did when I first began. So, and you kind of learn on the go also, like charting and paperwork and how like systems in the hospital work. Like it's overwhelming at first, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be okay. I took a lot of classes. All my electives were done before I did my CPE. So my first term, I only had 1 class I had to take. This last term, I'm only taking 2 classes. And then my final term, I'm only taking 3. But by then, CPE should be over with by the time. So hopefully I planned that out well, as best as I could. So take as many electives as you can before you do a CPE, because it's going to be hard to juggle all that stuff at the same time. Emotional and physical burdens. Yes. So mine is overnight. So I have to be answering calls, answering pages. And I think there's like an internal fear of mine that I may sleep through. So even though there's like a room where you can go and sleep, I have trouble sleeping. So even though I tell myself, go to sleep, you'll hear the pager go off, I have a lot of difficulty with that. So that's something. And then emotional. You get to meet people at their worst. It's not easy, and you do bring this stuff home with you. It's in the back of your mind, and you're still thinking about it like days and weeks later. And then you use those incidents to like reflect upon them and like, what did you learn, or why are you bringing this to us, and what do you hope like the rest of your cohort to like comment on? So you do become very vulnerable. Is CPE appropriate for everyone? Whew. I want to say yes. I hope everyone, but the requirements of it may be overwhelming. At the end of the day, I say, oh, I've learned so much and it's been great, but it's been tough. So I would say maybe some people to do like their CPE over the summer, where it's full-time, 10 weeks, and you could just focus on that. That might be better than like trying to juggle school and work and all these other things. But again, it's scheduling. But it is appropriate because you learn a lot about yourself and a lot about your faith. Classes are beneficial. So I took both of Leah Thomas's class, the Pastoral Theological Method, and then the Suffering class. And I also took one with Bishop Baxter, Pastoring in a Time of Crisis, I think it was called. And those incredible, just, again, I don't have any answers, but I know what not to say, which is a lot more helpful than thinking I have the answers. And between Bishop Baxter and Leah Thomas, like, I think I had a good grasp on like how to present myself in conversations. If you're interested in doing a CPE, do your research. Do your research on the program. There's some programs that are like LGH is more concentrated on the healing aspect and the healing ministry and doing ministerial work. Whereas Hershey is definitely a lot more academic, a lot more critical. Yeah, that's the difference, I would say. So if you're a person of the heart, it might be difficult to fit in at Hershey. So let's just put it that way. Where Hershey is a lot more thinking as a chaplain. Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next is Gail.
Good evening, everybody. There's some areas I probably won't go over again because it's pretty much the same, and I'll mention those when we go along. I did my CPE at Christiana Hospital in Newark, Delaware. I did it there because Delaware is my home, and it was just comfortable for me to do it there near my home because I thought I was going to do it in the summer months. I applied, started the application process a year in advance, doing just as Jonathan and Martha had mentioned, doing homework and research on different hospitals and programs. There's 2 in Delaware, the Children's Hospital, and Christiana Care actually controls 7 facilities, 3 hospitals and other smaller urgent care facilities. And all of those things feed into the Christiana Hospital in Newark, Delaware, and that's where I spend most of my time. What qualities, and I want to tell you a little bit about Christiana Care, and then it'll give you a better understanding of who we see and what we see. I told you about how big the place is. There are 40,000 admissions a year. 1,400 of those are children, and 4,800 of those are ICU. It's considered a teaching hospital. You'll see a lot of residents in the nursing program, in the doctor's program, and even in the pastoral care office. There's a breakdown of who's there, and one breakdown is residents. So, which leads to that. The 3 breakdowns of assignments you can have in the pastoral care program is a student chaplain. And as Jonathan and Martha have mentioned to you, while the hospital has distinctions, everybody, when you walk in the door, you're a chaplain. Like, that's exactly the way you're treated. You're given some training and all of that, but you are regarded as, and not just by the pastoral care staff, but by the hospital staff, as a chaplain. That's what they're going to be looking to you as, and relating to you as, and treating you as. Let's see here. What else do I have to answer? So the different levels within the pastoral care office, they have student chaplains, which I am. Then they have residents. And the residency program is a program where you commit to an entire year as working as a chaplain, and you can't have anything else going on. No school, no other job, nothing. You're working for them, and you're focused entirely on that program. You have to have at least 1 unit of pastoral care training or internship as a student chaplain before you can apply to the residency program. And then the next phase is the staff chaplains that are on staff, and they even have different breakdowns of staffing within that unit as well. The way the program works, for Christiana Care is a little different than the others have described. For Christiana Care, when you're working in their CPE program, you're assigned a mentor type of person who is typically one of the residents or staff chaplains, and you're assigned a unit or two. I was assigned 2 units, but then you also have responsibilities throughout the hospital that everybody divvies up. And then you're given opportunities in other wings of the hospital to get specialized training. For example, you may be assigned for a day in the emergency room. You're not always in the emergency room. We do not answer codes like the other 2 have mentioned. That's not how they operate there. You're assigned a unit and you do the work in your unit, and typically you are going to other units for training, but not all the time. In the course of the program, there's a teaching day, which is 1 day a week, and there's 2 types of programs. There's the intensive program that requires 16 to 20 hours a week. And then they have another program that's a lot less intensive. And I'm not exactly sure about the number of hours. I think it's 10 hours a week, but I'm not sure about that program. I'm in the intensive program, but again, I made that decision thinking that I was going to be in the program in the summer. And because of COVID, it was moved to the fall. I'm jumping around to some of the questions when I hit them. That was not a good idea. I think Jonathan mentioned it. You know, you should really think about how you're going to plan your CPE around your classes. I was intentional about deciding not to have class when I have CPE because I wanted the intensive program. I wish I could have kept it that way because I have been struggling with having a CPE and class. It has been extremely overwhelming, not just because of the number of hours that are required by the CPE, but a CPE and the classroom time is very, very draining. I mean, it's very intensive labor-wise, but it's intensive on your energy levels as well. It's very draining. If you're going to do an intensive program, I would not recommend you have class when you're doing it. Do it when it's the summertime because it is very taxing and it requires a lot of time, including their classroom time. So that's some of what happens in the course of the hospital, and I'll go through some other things in a second. The classroom time, I'm on Mondays, but the other cohort is on Wednesdays. It's a full day of class. During that time in your classroom, you go over what happens in the course of your work. You share information and you give each other feedback on how you're handling things. A lot of the things that you share, particularly in your verbatims, you sort of learn from some of the others on how to manage things. And you hear some things that you may not have been exposed to yet, and get a feel on what works and what doesn't work. And you hear how they handled it, and you can decide how you would instead handle it with the coaching of the director of the program. Let's see here. I talked about the emotional burden, time commitments. The documentation, as I said, I started preparing and reviewing programs and was accepted into 2 a year in advance of actually getting into the programs and preparing. You know, I did all of that in advance. And that's probably the smartest thing to do because there's a lot that you have to do for Christiana Care to get ready to start your program. A lot of additional paperwork in addition to just the application process to get ready for. The classes that are beneficial for preparing, I would say like everyone else, Leah Thomas's program, Pastoral Care. I haven't taken some of the others that Jonathan mentioned, but I do know that Leah Thomas's class, and she's not here to teach it anymore, but taking pastoral care is critical to be successful in that program. There you're going to learn and master verbatims, and in the program that I was in, that was required. And mastering some of that really helps you in your charting, because for every patient, after seeing them, you're not just going and visiting a patient and then that's it. And I don't know if that's what happens in other programs, but at Christiana Care, you're also charting. So after visiting with the patient, you're charting, and they have a list of questions that look a lot like what you're saying in your verbatim that have to be listed, and if the person is going to need follow-up attention and things like that. So Leah Thomas's, or she's not here anymore, but pastoral care is bare minimum what you're going to need to be successful. Is CPE appropriate for everyone? It's something that I actually have grown a lot in. It's a requirement for my ordination, but I think it should be almost mandatory for everyone if you're going to go into ministry. Appropriate, I think some people may struggle more than others in doing the work, and I've noticed that in my cohort. Some people do struggle a little more than others in doing the work. But I think it's a very, very necessary thing if you're going into ministry. Recommendations, just plan and think through. This is a really serious undertaking. It's not like other types of internships. You know, when you think about internships, this is a very, very, not just intense on you, but a very serious endeavor that you're embarking on. And it's labor intensive, it's emotional, but it's very serious, and it's very meaningful for the people that you encounter. And you're making a huge difference in their life. And so given all of that, the level of seriousness that goes into the work and the decision and the selection of the site that you're going to make should be well thought out and very intentional. And I'm open for any questions you may have afterwards as well.
Thank you, Gail, for sharing your experiences. Next is Shandola.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. My experience with this process, I would like to share that it is very important for an individual to do your research ahead of time to discern where you would like to be placed. I had the experience of looking, but I was overwhelmed with the amount of information that was being requested of me as a candidate for a program. I looked at LGH initially, and the volume of information that was being asked just kind of got to me because of the work of finishing up coursework. My head was just not ready to receive it. And so I dawdled. I lost time. And so I ultimately ended up speaking with Dr. Baber, who is our field placement director, and he found a placement for me, and it ended up being an excellent pairing. I worked as an intern at the Caring Rehabilitation Center, and in this line of work as a chaplain in the spiritual care department, we work with the patients who come in for treatment. And this is a Monday through Friday operation as far as chaplaincy goes. We are here Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And during the course of the day, we do see patients. We do interact with the team. And we are also responsible for administrative work, as Gail was mentioning, about record keeping as far as documentation on patient files and things of that nature. We also have classroom time, which is Mondays. We are in class on Mondays from 9 to 3. And fortunately, in this particular CPE program, there is an opportunity for you to design your own schedule. So I go on the days, I come in to the physical space and work an 8-hour day twice a week around my schoolwork. So that was very good for me. So please do be mindful to do your research ahead of time, and it will help you to determine where you would like to be placed. Also, do not hesitate to go to Dr. Baber for his ability to help you determine where you might be able to go or to even get into a program. As far as the things that we do in classroom time, we do verbatim. I did not have pastoral care with Dr. Thomas. However, I had a number of years in healthcare where I had to do documentation. Additionally, for the work that I am doing, which is for a treatment facility for people with substance concerns, I had exposure with substance abuse programming very early in my life. So it's like coming back around again. So I had some familiarity already based on my professional occupation. I had some familiarity with how to manage with the writing styles. It's a clinical setting. So there's a specific type of way that you are expected to document patient files. So while I got some brief training from my supervisor, it did help me that I had prior experience doing it in a hospital setting. So if you are able to take a pastoral care class, it may benefit you tremendously. As far as burden, it is important to be prepared to come into your setting knowing that you have a great responsibility to the people you will be serving. It is not to be taken lightly at all. These are the lives of individuals who are broken, and they look to you to help them make connections with the God of their understanding, their higher power, or however they might relate. You have to care for people. You have to be open to hear their stories. And when I say hear, I mean listen. Listen to them, listen to their heart. And know that this is a person who has experienced some things that has made them tender. And I leave away every time I interact with the patients that I am assigned. I leave away hoping that my listening made a difference for them, and hoping that something that was shared during the course of our time spent made a difference for them. I wonder to myself how some come into this work that may not be ready. I won't say ready, but I've heard horror stories as we've listened to television about things that go on. You have a tremendous responsibility because you're holding the lives of people in your hands. And how you share with them will make all the difference in whether they regroup from what's happening to them or not. So you always want to be mindful that you have a tremendous responsibility in caring for others. This setting is different in that it's not necessarily life and death to the extent you would find in a hospital setting. However, it can mean the difference of whether this person will go back and do something to themselves that could bring about death if not handled appropriately. So it's not immediate. Hopefully it will never happen, but it's a little bit different from working in a hospital setting, though we identify the persons that come here as patients. They are receiving treatment, but it's just a little bit different. And so as far as weightiness of the job, that's the heaviest for me, is just knowing that I need to be mindful of where they are and what interaction I have with them, and to care for them and let them know that they are loved. So with that being said, I see our time is drawing near, and I apologize if you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer. I am part of, like I said, I'm part of Karen's rehabilitation facility, and I am working in the, we are associated with the Center for Spiritual Care and Pastoral Formation. So there you have it.
Thank you, Shandola, for sharing your experiences. Next, we have Beth, and after Beth share her experiences, we have questions and answers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Neil. I wanted to, being the last one, I wanted to hit on a few things that the other panelists didn't mention. First, I did my CPE at Paoli Hospital outside of Philadelphia. At the time, I was living in Wayne, which was only 15 minutes away. I lucked out in that I was in the very first class of the summer intensive program of CPE at Paoli. The fact that it was so close to my home was a big factor for me. The other places I was looking were in Philadelphia, and it would have been at least an hour, and traveling on the Schuylkill, and oh, good no, oh, I wasn't happy about that. So I was very, very happy to be able to land at Paoli. And the one thing that really impressed me and made it very possible for me to be there was my supervisor. When I interviewed with her, she asked me to talk about, well, what do you know about CPE? And I said, well, I heard it's sort of a break you down to build you up kind of thing. And she said, you know, I'm not into that break you down stuff. I just like to build people up. And I said, we're going to get along great. So now it's not that there were never any breakdowns, but she was the type to be very nurturing. And I have a friend in my class who actually started her second unit before the first one was over. And the second supervisor was a lot more militant than her. She said our supervisor was like the Mr. Rogers of CPE. So, and that was important for me. I need a nurturing, more gentle approach. So when you interview with CPE programs, that might be something to consider. I started looking at least a year in advance because I'm just paranoid that way. I need to have all my ducks in a row. Some of the things that weren't mentioned, my class was purposely very diverse. We were diverse theologically, we were diverse sexually, we were diverse male, female, we had non-binary, and that was very challenging. I was in the summer intensive, so it was 6 hours of class a week, 3 on Tuesday and 3 on Thursday, and then about 24 hours a week on the floor. So the classwork consisted of doing verbatims. I actually made a point of picking cases that I thought I did the worst on because I wanted to learn as much as I could. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I remember doing art projects and reading, and I think some of the homework I probably didn't even do. Oh, another thing we did, our supervisor brought in people from different departments to talk to us. I remember in particular the palliative care doctor, the maternity, and talking about like when a baby dies and things like that. It's very, very hard to go through some of these presentations. And we really challenged each other, particularly on the verbatims. And it was definitely very intense. It was hard, but we really grew together as a group. And I became really good friends with my one non-binary friend in particular. So that was really great. I learned a lot when I was there. And one of the things I learned right away was that I'm not cut out to be a chaplain. I figured that out within the first 2 weeks, which is a good thing because I really wanted to be a pastor of a congregation. So, so you learn what you can do and what you don't want to do. You learn to listen very quickly. You learn not to try to fix people. I was really bad at that, particularly with the younger people, because I'm a mom and I just wanted to try and fix people. And I learned that that's rule number 1. Don't try to fix people. The classes that you could take that were not mentioned, if you can take a class on trauma or on grief care, I would highly recommend that. Truth be told though, until you're there, you know, you just sort of, you fly by the seat of your pants, and I don't know that any class can really fully prepare you. You just have to jump in and do it, and pray for a lot of grace, you know. One of the other things, I had a friend in my class who was very diligent, and she insisted on visiting every single patient on her list. And we would have a lot of people. And I remember one time I was with a patient, it was kind of getting late in the evening, 8 or 9 o'clock, and my friend was still there, and she passed by us in the hall, and the patient was actually worried about her because she was there all the time, and she lived in Philadelphia. And so so my advice is, don't feel like you have to see every single patient. It's okay. Do what you can do. And if your shift is over, go home. It's okay to go home. I made a big point of taking care of myself while I was there, in part because it's just a good idea, and in part because I was going through a lot of stuff personally at the time. So some of the ways I took care of myself were I took advantage of their prayer room. Every shift, I would go to the prayer room for 15 minutes and just close my eyes and breathe and just be silent for a while. That really helped to ground me and prepare me for my shift. I brought food from home that was healthy. I vowed to not buy one single item at the hospital, at the coffee shop, or anything, and I didn't. I didn't buy a single cup of coffee. I wanted to just try and be healthy. And Oh, and they had a nice room at the hospital called the Oasis Room with these massage chairs. I took advantage of that every chance I had. It was really important. The other thing that was really great about Paoli is that they really valued the chaplains. Not all hospitals do. And we were allowed in the trauma area. I remember the first time I went in, it was really scary. We had our pager, and on the pager, it said that someone had fallen and impaled themselves. So one of the other chaplains and I went together, and we were like debating around, can we really go in? And we were really going in. And I was so surprised at how the whole thing went. It's not like on TV. Everybody's very calm. They know what they're doing. Even the patient was calm. I was very surprised, but they want you to be there, and they want you to go see the first responder and try to find out information about the family and speak to the family when they get to the emergency room and update them. And here's the other thing about chaplains. Some patients think that you're there to tell them that you're going to die. So you have to be very careful with that. That is not your job at all. That's the doctor's job. So I've had to explain myself a couple of times. And so let me think now. Let me go through some of the questions really quick. I went over the summer especially to avoid having to do it during class because I felt it would be really hard. But at Paoli, they were very flexible. That might vary from program to program depending on where you are. But at Paoli, she was welcome. She was willing to be very flexible with us as far as what we needed. As long as we got our hours in, it was fine. So that was great. It is emotionally it's very emotional. It's hard. There's no doubt about it. I agree with Gail. If you're going into ministry, I think CPE is imperative. You will learn a lot. It will, I don't want to say it'll make or break you necessarily, but it will be a really important step in developing your ministry, and it will guide you, and it will prepare you in an invaluable way. It really will. And for me, it helped me to see what I'm made of. I was going through a lot, but I recognized that the work grounded me and that I was able to put my stuff on the back burner and do my work. So I really learned a lot. So I totally recommend CPE, and I totally recommend Paoli. It's about an hour away from Lancaster, but I absolutely recommend it. If I were going to do it again, I wouldn't want to go anywhere but Paoli. I think that's everything. And we probably have about 2 minutes, right? Oh, it's right on time, 6:15. I guess this might be question time, right?
Yes, thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Thank all our panelists for participating today. I'm during my discernment now whether or not this should be something I want to do. So I definitely appreciate the feedback. With the remaining minutes that we have, does anyone have a question?
Yeah, when is it normal to do this? In the summer of your second year?
I graduated in 2020. I originally wanted to do mine in 2018, but I waited until 2019 because I heard Paoli was going to open their program. So, and I think I did my other field ed in fall of 2018, from what I remember. So I think probably third year for CPE. If you're a weekender, if you're a day student, second or third year.
All right, day
I
student.
did mine
And-
the summer after my first year. That's what I planned on, but it ended up being the fall of my second year.
Okay, and how does this work out with cross-cultural? That's another thing we have to do. Is that a summer thing always?
Yeah, it's completely
Cross-cultural,
separate, but it's in the summer usually, like after.
Well, you only have so many summers.
cross-cultural
It's usually in the May
Tends to
time.
happen right after school ends in May. Let me think. I did mine in 2018, so I was at the end of my 3rd year.
Yeah, I know people who went on their cross-cultural trip and came back to do a summer internship. So
Right.
it's
All
possible.
right.
It's 2 weeks in early May, and typically the summer internships don't start till a little bit later in June.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes
it-
they start at
guidelines
the end
are-
of, sometimes they start at the end of May.
Right.
It differs.
It varies by hospital. I mean, it really,
Yeah.
or placement. So you really,
Programs all differ.
but I think, the convenience to home was certainly a factor for me as well. I live just a few blocks from the hospital. And so when I'm getting home at 11 o'clock at night, dead tired, I didn't want to have to drive an hour,
Oh,
so-
heavens, no.
And if it's
Well,
really bad weather, I can walk there, so that's a consideration for me as well. But so as Jonathan said, it really is a personal decision in terms of your call, your location, and what you ultimately feel gifted to do. So I think all of that, but there's a lot of different programs. And I think the SCC has done a great job of bringing a nice cross section of us together. I just wish we had more time to really delve into it, because it's a really, really important program.
So if I live in the Poconos, and I probably live within 5 miles of 6 different hospitals that divide between 3 different systems. So if I'm going to do it in the summer, I want to do it where I live.
Right. Sure.
Okay.
So
If
just
they have
got
a
it.
program.
look
Right.
on their
Right. If they
website
have
to
a
see if
program.
they have,
Program.
yeah, I think Guy
Okay.
Center does. Guy Center
That's the
should be near,
research.
right, so that's the research you have to do.
Right.
Right. Well, we have Lehigh Valley Healthcare, St. Luke's.
Guy
Yeah.
Center too.
And then Martha, how did it work out? You did yours in the summer,
No, I'm in it right now. I'm in
but
it
how
right
does
now.
that? But you're done at LTS? No. So you have
I'm taking
LTS
3 courses plus CPE and have my own business. So I'm
plus
not
Stevenson.
correct. That's one of the 30 courses. Yes.
All right.
Bill, some of
All
those,
right.
So I would not recommend it. I would not recommend, but honestly,
No.
it is beginning to all tie together. Either that or I just don't get sleep. So it all seems to make sense.
yeah, Bill, the student handbook has some of the guidelines for the field placement, for the CPE, and for the cross culture as well.
Yeah. And
I
so.
Thank you,
have a
Neil.
question for someone on the panel.
Mhm.
Yes.
My name is Jen. I'm from Tennessee. I finished a program, Master of Arts in Christian Ministry, and so I'm at LTS now in the DMin program, and I've taken care of persons, but not at LTS, and I took and this spring I'm getting ready to start a course, Theology and Practice of Pastoral Care. And my question is, do you have to finish all your questions before you do your internship? Are they looking for that,
The
or
classes.
how does that work?
It's not that they require, well, for Christiana Care, it's not that they required you to complete certain classes. I don't know about others' experience. What's wrong? But it's the things that you learn in those classes, like for Leah Thomas, if I hadn't taken her class, I would not be familiar with verbatims. And then there's some other things that you learn in your classes, like about the law and what you're required. You're a mandatory reporter, and those kinds of things you wouldn't understand unless you took some of those courses like pastoral care. And it matters because my unit had kids that were abused and suicidal, and a lot of times you find that in your pastoral care work in the hospital, people will tell you things that they won't tell anybody else. And one of my incidents in my charting had to be reviewed by police because they didn't know the person had an issue until they revealed all that stuff to me. And when they investigated it, and I'm a first reporter, so I had to do it. So, but I wouldn't have known that unless I had taken Leah Thomas's class and some other classes that taught me about those things.
Yep.
So my question is, do the centers or hospitals or care facilities, I can imagine that having that information is really important. But I was thinking, trying to plan like months ahead of time. So I wanted to do an internship during the summer of 2021. And my school in Tennessee, they don't care if I do the internship in Pennsylvania because they know that I'm also studying up there as well. And of course, everything's virtual now. So will a center accept you if you've had like some of your courses, but not all of your courses? I guess that's my question. And thank you so much, Gail, for all that helpful information. And everyone, I received so much helpful information from everyone. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I know some of you have to leave. I'm one of them as well. I have a class in 5 minutes, so I'm gonna
Right.
short. Can someone answer her?
I can. And
Okay, I'm gonna
can I-
sign off then,
You
Neil.
don't
Great to be
need-
with you. Bye-bye.
So
can
you
help
don't
anything.
need to have a MDiv or any actual training. It's not required. What's the other one? Suggested that you have higher ed, but it's not required, because I know some people that just have bachelors that are in the program at Hershey. So it really does depend on what the program's requirements are.
Right.
Thank you.
I was in the middle of my time as an MDiv, and I didn't even have my grief class yet. So I don't even remember that being a thing, truthfully. So no.
Thank you for sharing that.
If you do the
You're very
residency
welcome.
program, it might be though. That's something different.
Well, I was speaking for my own program. That
There's a
was my
difference between
experience. I
internship and
can't
resident.
speak for everybody.
Our next event, SEC event, is coming up this Tuesday. Well, yes, this Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And the title is Double Time Management, Self-Care and Boundaries in Bivocational Ministries. And the speaker is Reverend Barry Chambers. So you'll receive an email on that. And I encourage you to attend that event as well if you have time. Sounds like there's limited time around here these days. So once again, thank you for coming. I know some of you have a class in about 5 minutes. So at this time, we're going to end the panel discussion, and the SEC really appreciates your participation and your attendance at this event.
Thank you for
Thanks,
inviting me.
Neil.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.
Good luck. Have fun. Have a good class.